We'll start off. Go ahead and have you introduce yourself. The topic is something I really am interested in talking about. So go ahead.
My name is Wade Borth. I kind of joke around. I said I'm the farm kid from Fargo, North Dakota. That's come out to the East Coast. Surprised, really surprised. Shouldn't be surprised what I find, but it's refreshing to find. It probably is the word of liberty-minded people.
For sure.
Again, you hear the East Coast, Northeast. It's not what you think. When you get here, it's like, man, it's a perfect surprise. It's a lot like being back home.
It is. There's a Midwestern kind of vibe to it all.
Very much so. Yep.
It depends. Like not in Boston, but more up here where there's normal people. Yes.
It's been one of the comments I use is that a mind that's been expanded by new thoughts and new experiences can never go back to its previous form.
That's very, very true.
And even some of the things I heard here today, the panel ahead of me was talking about cryptocurrencies, and it was like, man, that just blew my mind away. Some of the things they were talking about, some of the visions they see, some of the issues, all the things that maybe were back in my mind, but I hadn't really given much thought. So the panels and the people here and just the discussions out in the hallway have just been fabulous.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about what brings you to Liberty Forum this year and what kind of business you're in.
So what brings me here, I was invited to come and speak on a topic called what we call the infinite banking concept. And it's just really a way to take theoretical and move it into practical about how do we free ourselves from the existing banking system by creating our own privatized banking system, and how we should think about money and look at how traditional banking is taught, again, from the thousands of years ago, that banking system of putting money and then using money and putting it back, the non-inflationary aspect of money and banking, and how we can apply that to our own lives, and how we can structure it, and how we should think about it. And if we do that, we can, in essence, take that function back to a you and me level. So it takes Austrian economics, which is just a real belief and kind of a ground-up approach to relationships and everything we do, and it says, hey, I want to have my banking system be representative of my Austrian economic beliefs. This is the best way to go about doing it.
And this is talking about people using their own money, creating this store of wealth, and then being able to take loans against basically their own money.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So it's like anything else. It's like if you're using the traditional banking system, that's the non-fractional reserve, you're using somebody else's dollars to buy a doodad, buy a car, or buy a business, or whatever it might be. What we encourage is that you build up your own warehouse of wealth, your own dollars, and then use them to buy things and to invest in things that are going to create wealth. And then that way you're responsible. Again, one of the slides I talked about is it takes three things to make it happen. It takes time, money, and discipline. Because the time it just doesn't happen overnight. It's a whole thought process, right? So how long has it taken me to go from this Chicago School of Thought and Economics to this Austrian School of Thought? And I'm just, it's been 30 years. So it's a lifetime really of things we do and things we think about here. So the first step is it takes time. It takes money. Like you mentioned, you have to take your money and really believe what you're doing and say, I'm going to put my money aside. Then when I do put it aside, have the discipline being the third point, to say now I have to return that to that bucket of money, because if I had a loan at my credit union, a loan at my one of the big banks, you would say, yeah, I have to make that payment. You would make that payment. But the funny thing about people, not so much here, but just the general public, is that if they build up a shoebox full of money, they have very little discipline to put it back because, oh, well, it's my money.
Right.
And I make the assertion that people I'll pick on Wells Fargo. They love Wells Fargo more than they love their own families, because you look at what they really do with their money. And so it's a strong statement, but the point being, we should treat ourselves and our own privatized, because we're all in the banking business if we know it or not. We finance everything we do. And so we have to treat it with better regard than we have in the past. And we just show them that system and then how to properly fund that system.
Yep. And people pay interest to Wells Fargo. They should be paying interest to themselves.
Oh, very much so. Why wouldn't you take control of the thing that's most valuable in your operation? If it's a business, if it's real estate, or whatever it is, take control of that. Take that back to your control.
Yep.
Because control is freedom.
Absolutely. Now, did you write a book?
I did not write a book. I tell people I'm a good book reader. I'm not a good book writer. So, but there's a number of books that, R. Nelson Nash wrote Becoming Your Own Banker, The Infinite Banking System, and that changed my life about 15 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
If I always tell people if I have to recommend one book, it's that one, because that's the one that I tell people. I'm a German-Irish kid from central North Dakota, and I said sometimes it takes a 2x4 to get my attention. And that book slapped me up alongside the head.
Can we get just just a high-level view of like the gritty logistics of a definition of infinite banking?
You have to build up capital, put some money aside, put some dollars aside, and then when you need money, you have to take that money to buy something that's going to grow cash flow or grow wealth, whatever that is. I don't, start a podcast.
You can't spend it on cheeseburgers.
Okay, fair enough.
or Robert Kiyosaki calls them doodads, right? Okay. So you don't buy doodads, buy things that are going to grow your wealth. And then have a system set up and a thought process set up to say, how do I pay that back? How do I put that money back with interest and grow my inventory even bigger so I can do a bigger deal the next time and a bigger deal the next time? So in a 10-second word, that's really what we're talking about. And we can talk about where you store that money, where you warehouse your dollars.
Sure, where would that, how would we do that?
So you can do it really anywhere, but there isn't a better place to put it than a properly structured whole life policy from a mutual insurance company.
Okay.
And the reason why I picked that, and the reason why the infinite banking communities pick that, is because a mutual insurance company is just that. It's a contract between like-minded people, run for your benefit. And really, at the end of the day, what is a mutual insurance company? They're the largest financial institutions in this country, really in the world, that are non-inflationary, and they're safe. They've been around for 200 plus years.
So it's using sort of existing structures that are there. And would you say that this is a new concept of using life insurance this way, or is this something that people have been doing for a long time?
The wealthy have been doing it for a long time.
Okay.
I'll pick on Wells Fargo again, and this number changes, but you go to FDIC.gov, if you're familiar with what the FDIC is, but you go to their website, FDIC.gov, look up Wells Fargo and look in their assets, and in there, anywhere between 15 and 25% of their Tier 1 assets is held in life insurance.
Interesting.
So don't believe me, look at the banks.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they're not going to pick something risky. They're going to go for something extremely safe.
Well, they have the long time horizon. I think that's something that is certainly difficult, and I wonder your thoughts on that as someone who's spends a lot of time thinking about concepts that have these longer time horizons of not even years, but we could say decades or multiple decades.
Generations.
Generations even. I think that's even more important than when we talk about the most elite, wealthiest families, those sort of legendary families, they think in terms of generations. When we have people thinking in young people now, certainly minutes. I mean, let's be realistic. It's like how
I can't get my bank account, Wells Fargo. You couldn't get a bank account for a day, and people were in panic.
How what would you say for people trying to just even begin to put their minds into a state of let's start with years and then we'll go decades. I think generations is something you probably have to really work your way into. What do you say about putting how do we start to put our minds in that state?
It really comes back down to looking at ultimately what's your why. Simon Sinek says, what's your why? And I ask people here, and I said, what's your why? We want freedom. And I said, well, why? Mm-hmm. And I was talking to a young gal. She was pregnant, and she said, so my son or my daughter, whatever it is, has a freer life than I have, or than I've experienced. Maybe not even freer, but not any worse than what I have.
Right.
So I think sometimes when we start having that conversation with people, we get them to kind of think, well, what's your why long term? And again, for somebody that's 22 years old, I mean, when I was 22 years old, I couldn't figure out my why. And it took me a while. And I think that's part and parcel of our education systems. They don't try to teach kids what their worth is and who they are.
Sure.
And a lot of times you don't figure that out until 30. I probably didn't figure it out until I was 30. I really know I didn't figure it out until I was 35 when I read Nelson's book, and that was kind of what hit me as a why. So each person's a little bit different, but I think ultimately when we stop thinking about ourselves and start thinking about what our legacy or generation coming down the pipe is going to have to deal with, I think it becomes a little bit easier. So I don't know that I have an easy answer for you to say.
I think that's a fantastic answer, actually.
Because it's hard. Because quite frankly, I talk about the three things that it takes to make it happen. It takes time, money, and discipline. Discipline's a hard thing, and that's why I encourage people to get a coach in the IBC concept. Because, like anything else in life, we can get off track. I used to do a little weightlifting when I was right out of college, and I loved it. And then I had a coach come in and says, well, you're doing it all wrong. It's because I convinced myself what I was doing was right. Why do we come to forums like this? So we can kind of reaffirm that what we're doing is right and we're going on the right path. Because I think as humans, we have a tendency to want to stray. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I think that was actually fantastic. If people want to find out more about you, about what you're doing, maybe to get some advice from you, how can they do that?
I would start off by, I'm a huge promoter in Austrian economics in the Infinite Banking Institute. I was one of their charter members. The gentleman that was my mentor and that changed my mind was by a guy by the name of R. Nelson Nash.
Okay.
And he wrote the book, Becoming Your Own Banker, the Infinite Banking Concept. And so if you want to just learn about the concept, go to their website, infinitebanking.org.
Okay.
You can find out more information on that.
Fantastic.
So,
Wade Borth, thank you so much for sitting down with us. And yeah, some great concepts to think about. It's been a very big weekend for talking about finance and really sort of putting it into, I think financial sovereignty is really the theme, and I think we need to have that.
Well, I think part and parcel that comes with the fact that once your finances are free, just think about people that are what we consider wealthy. Their mind, and even look back 300 years when that financial freedom starts to happen, you have the capacity to start thinking of other things. You're not thinking about how do I put food on the table today.
Right.
Your mind is now freed up to think, well, how can I make a big impact in my legislature? How can I? Because once you're not having to worry about day in and day out needs, it frees your mind to think about other things.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. Thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. Thanks so much.
We'll see you around. Enjoy the rest of Liberty Forum.
Thanks so much. It's been great.
Thank you, Wade Borth.